Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. If I don't get a good morning, we're not going to start. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I hope we're all doing well. Beautiful. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I officially welcome you to iOuranos Digital Transformation Conference on the theme, obviously, the future of digital transformation, banking, payment, and security. I remember very well back in the day, my grandmother taught me something very, very profound, and that has to do with how to keep things in mind. And so she decided to just allow me get into acronyms. So for this one, we're going to keep the B, the P, and the S. Please kindly tell somebody that we have BPS. All right, beautiful. Thank you. You're all smart. Please, a round of applause for yourselves. Nice. Great. Well, my name is Kojo Dasabre. I'm going to be your MC for this August occasion, and it's a privilege to be here. Before we get into what we have for you for today, I know, some of you have, already appointed yourself with other people, but with respect to what we have for today, there's just an informal session, all right? Just 1 minute of your time. Please kindly lock in eyes with somebody that you haven't spoken to today. Thank you. In 2 minutes, please kindly move to that person and introduce yourself to that person. I know what I'm doing though. If you actually have a card, you can actually exchange your card with that person. Hi, sir. Oh, come and open an account. Nice to meet you, sir. Could you Dasabre? Yes, please. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, 30 seconds. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, please, you can move back to your seats respectively. Thank you very much. Hi, Susan.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm very well. What's your name?
I'm Kojo.
Hi, Kojo. It's a pleasure meeting you.
Pleasure meeting you too. Great. All right, so how did it go? Was good? Nice. At least when we leave here, someone has a friend to talk to. And that's the whole purpose. Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, back to the acronym before I call in our very first speaker. Back to the acronym of BPS. Since we're exploring innovation, resilience, and secured growth in Ghana's financial service industry, with banking, personally, I'm just going to give some scenarios right here in Ghana. So, for instance, there are a lot of banks that are in our midst right now, and a lot of banks in Ghana too as well. So, a wise man once said that, hey, you can save your money, but if you don't invest it, what's the use? And my question here is, okay, so many banks, so many investment policies, which one do I choose at the end of the day? That's one. Now to the P, which has to do with payment. I quite remember just recently, I was just driving down the road and I wanted to buy something by Hawker. asked her, "Oh, these days I'm e-cash. I don't even have physical cash with me. So, do you have a means where I can actually just send you money?" She said, "No, I didn't get the item at the end of the day. I drove away." That's one. Now to security. Oh boy, these days I get my phone buzzing every single time, and if you don't take care, my money just goes away. We're talking about scams. So, with all this, we're just looking forward to get into that. And this conference seeks to explore innovation, resilience, security growth, financial system service of Ghana. Speaking of Ghana, we'll talk about that later. And so today, your who's, what, whys, how, do's, don'ts, highs and lows would all be answered by profound and knowledgeable speakers. And we just want to get straight into it. Ladies and gentlemen, a visionary leader in business and technology solutions. He's the group managing director of iOuranos Technologies, and he's in the person of Mr. Inform Okon. Please help me welcome the CEO and the group director of iOuranos. Please, with a round of applause, Mr. Inform Okon for the welcome address.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Good morning. Testing, testing.
Let me see if just give it this one.
Testing, testing.
Still not working?
Hello? Better now? Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Distinguished guests, leaders, stakeholders in the banking and ecosystem, my partners here, and my colleagues. It's my honor to welcome all of us to this session. The future of transformation in BPS. As you can see, I'm a good learner. Banking, payments, security. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm honored to welcome you to this session on the future of digital transformation in Ghana. Digital transformation, it's no longer a project, or, as the case may be, an upgrading technology. I think we've moved far beyond where we are on that today. It is the way we design trust, deliver value, and serve customers in real time. And in Ghana, the opportunity, it's clear. So we can build systems that are faster, more inclusive, more resilient, and more secure than ever before. Today I want to frame what we are, where we are going, and what we must do. Why the future of digital transformation, and why it should be different today. The digital journey in banking and payment has already changed behaviors. Customers expect instant confirmation, seamless onboarding, and payment experience that work wherever they are. But the next phase is not just about convenience, it's about confidence in the customers. In the future, digital transformation will be measured by 3 outcomes. Basically, trust at scale, efficiency and continuity, inclusion by design. As volume rises, expand, the weakest link in the chain, identify fraud controls, connectivity, customer experience, can quickly become a risk to the entire system. Hence, we're talking about banking, payments, and security. I'll first touch on banking, from the channels to customer outcomes. In banking, digital transformation is evolving from digital channels to customer outcomes. The functional bank will look less like a set of connected systems and more like a real-time platform that can respond to customers' needs instantly. We will see digital onboarding, personalized banking, APIs integration and integrations, more embedded finances, where payments, saving credits, and supports show up in the same workflow as the customer's daily activities. The key is the digitalization must reduce efforts for customers and reduce cycle times for institutions while we're still meeting regulatory requirements, compliance, and governance. Payments. I think payments will be talking to speed, interoperability, and value creation. The direction is clear. More real-time payments experience with consistent settlements, reliable messaging, and clear confirmation. Interoperability across rails and partners. Better dispute handling and transparency. Innovation that protects margins and reduces fraud losses, not innovation that creates new weaknesses for the ecosystem. As we know, as payments become faster and more automated, that will give room for fraud, bad actors, as the case may be. So the payment future must be designed with security controls that can operate in the same speed as transactions. Hence, it brings us to security. And the foundation of digital trust, if there is one message I want to leave with today's conversation, is this: security is not a cost center. And for the guys in banking and all that, we keep on spending. It's not a cost center, but it's the foundation of customer confidence and system sustainability. The future of security in banking and payments will require layered defenses across people, processes, and technology. Stronger identity and authentication, fraud detection, secure APIs, resilient infrastructures, and continuous security monitoring and occasional audits. Cybersecurity must be a shared responsibility. Banks, payments and services providers, merchants, regulators, and customers all play a role. Security awareness, good security hygiene, and responsible product design are part of the same system. What we must do next in Ghana. Digital transformation succeeds when it becomes coordinated action across the ecosystem. Today, I propose 5 practical priorities we can rely on. Build ecosystem interoperability, invest in risk-based security, modernize core platforms, responsibility, strengthen governance and oversight, improve customer outcomes through education, support, guidance that helps customers use services safely and merchants manage payments risk effectively. It's my opinion that when we do all these things, digital transformation becomes more than digital. It becomes sustainable, profitable, and inclusive. In closing and in call to action, as we begin this opening session, I encourage everyone to focus less on technology and more on the capabilities technology must deliver. Trust, resilience, speed, and fairness. Let this conversation shape how we collaborate, how we design safer customers' journey, how we modernize payment responsibilities, and how we build the security foundation that Ghana's digital future demands and depends on. Thank you, everyone, for being here, and I pray and hope that we have a very, very fruitful session. Thank you.
Please a big round of applause for Jonathan. Oh, sorry. Very profound speech, if you ask me. Thank you very much. But sir, before you actually just leave, a little bird told me that you love swimming. So I want to just ask you, between backstroke, breaststroke, butterfly, which one do you love? Or freestyle? Breaststroke. Interesting. We'll find out why later. Anyways. So, ladies and gentlemen, up to speed. Now, who is driving the next wave of digital transformation in banking? What technologies will define the future of financial services? Why must organizations rethink cybersecurity, resilience, and innovation strategies today? These are the questions that we will be finding answers to. And that leads us to two of our keynote sessions. And I would like to call on our very first speaker on this. He's head of products and strategy at iOuranos Technologies. He's a man who can switch between t-shirt and kaftan within 2 seconds. That I can assure you. But today he's in pinstripes, and that makes both of us. That means there's fire on the mountain. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Raymond Maduoku. Please, a round of applause.
Good morning, everyone. I don't know where you got that information from, but it's a bit too accurate. All right. Good morning, everyone. Okay. I don't know. How does it? Oh. Okay. All right. It's an honor to be here, sharing the same room with key industry stakeholders, policymakers, policy influencers within the Ghana FSI space and West Africa. Thank you for honoring our invitation. My name is Raymond Maragu, Head of Product and Strategy for iOuranos Technologies. And it's my first time here in Ghana, and I'm enjoying every bit of it. You know, I've met amazing people before the session started. I mean, really nice people, all smiles, very friendly, not what we hear every day from our end. I mean that in a good way. You guys are amazing. Right. You know, for about 13 years at iOuranos, we have been saddled with the responsibility of building, deploying, and supporting banking system and payment infrastructure across Anglophone and Francophone West Africa. And we've done that successfully over the years. However, in that process, we have learned that organizations that are slow to adapting to change face the consequences severely, and the ones that do anticipate the change and work towards it reap the benefits from it. You know, there is a myth going on saying, you know, I have conversations with people, C-suite executive, we speak on digital transformation, the need of it, and they go on to say, it's quite expensive. You know, it's not in our budget. We have to plan for it. And when they say these things, what I do tell them is, wait till you get the bill for not transforming your organization. It's even more expensive. It's even more costlier. It's severe, right? Now, the simple truth is digital transformation is no longer a strategy. It is survival for the FSI ecosystem in West Africa and in Ghana. You know, according to the Bank of Ghana Payment System data, in 2025, mobile money transaction values hit an all-time high of 4.1 trillion Ghana cedis, the highest it has ever been, with 8 billion in transaction volume. That's a 36% increment from 2024, which was, I think, was about still around 8-point-something billion and 3.1 billion in transaction count. What does that mean for FSI and the ecosystem? It means that customers are choosing digital channel over walking into banking halls. Nobody wants to pick up a pen and a paper again to complete a transaction. Nobody wants a manual intervention in their processes. You know, for us in the FSI space, it means there's a new battleground for operational efficiency. Because if demands are increasing, that means our system needs to be more robust. Process automation, AI forecasting, legacy modernization are some of the few things we are looking at to transform digitally. Cross-border payments, the new PAP system, fraud and risk. We can keep going on and on. People don't want to walk into banking halls anymore, regardless of who the customer is, whether corporate, commercial, or retail. They are concerned about three things. They are concerned about the ease of doing a transaction, the speed that comes with it, and the security attached to it. Customers no longer need manual intervention in their journey. Manual process is costing us money, in case you are not aware. For every time there's a human intervention or a manual process, you are paying someone extra to complete that process that can be automated. Customer journey needs to be seamless end-to-end, have minimal to no manual intervention, no paper-based workflow. If you do have that, it represents delays, and there shouldn't be any lack of disconnection across system. I mean, Ghana is doing a lot. They are one of the front runners in West Africa and globally. Right, the interoperability within mobile money, wallet system, core banking infrastructure is amazing. Right, the MC said he did a transaction or was trying to do a transaction with mobile money. I mean, it's fast becoming part of the culture, and we must adapt. The future of banking and payments will be defined by the degree of operational automation and the extent to which customer journeys are fully digitalized. I am an example. I want to do everything on my mobile device. I don't want, regardless, if I'm even transacting as a commercial person or as a corporate client, I want to do everything seamlessly. And funny thing is, we are building a system currently for a client across Africa. What we are doing is basically just upgrading, for the lack of a better word, the entire system flow. They want to go bypass cutoff. They don't want anybody to be in the back-end office to have to confirm something, review something. They want to put parameters in place to ensure that transaction is seamless. They want transaction counts to be high. I can keep going on and on. It is on that note that we have carefully selected the partners and OEMs that will be speaking here today. We are prepared for the future. We understand what has happened in the past, and we are here to partner to do great things together. Please allow me welcome on stage our CISO, in the name of Yusuf Oleniyan, to speak briefly on security. Thank you.
It's good to see your faces. Sorry, I have a slide. Okay, sorry, pardon me, I'm going to hold my mic. Seems like we're not hearing the other guys. So, yeah, my name is Yusuf Oleniyan, and I'm the head of security at iOuranos. I'm just going to walk us through our security portfolio briefly so that we can understand what we offer and what we do in terms of how we support our customers. Okay. Okay, so yeah, so the security portfolio for iOuranos is based on the NIST framework. So, and we all know that the NIST framework now is has 6 pillars, right? Before it used to be 5, but now govern was introduced. And under these frameworks, we have mapped out each of those pillars and identified solutions that are very critical for customers in the FSI and the oil and gas and other sectors. So the belief is, as long as you have solutions around these pillars, you should be covered. So The first one would be protect. So as you can see here, we have recover, respond, detect, protect, identify, and then the new guy, govern, right there. So I'll just touch on each of these very quickly. The first one will be protect. Now, protect, we are using a layered security approach. We're using perimeter security. So this is, if you're familiar with the OSI model, this is something that goes in line with the OSI model. So we're looking at perimeter security, network security, endpoint, application security, data security, identity, cloud, and user security. Moving to perimeter security, things like DDoS prevention, that's the distribution of service, and you will see a couple of the OEMs or partners with. So this is not all of them, but we just shuffled a couple of them in there, and these are the OEMs that offer some of these services. So we're looking at DDoS prevention. So when we're talking about perimeter security, we are saying where do they first get to before they get into your environment? The same way in your house or in your compound, or in your offices, you have to get through the fence or the gate before you get into the building, right? So we're saying what is a threat gonna face before it gets into my network. So we are saying distributed denial of service, where we have NetScout, Cloudflare, Imperva, F5. We have perimeter firewalls, intrusion detection systems, and IPS systems. Moving on to network security. So before now, network security, you have your firewalls and you do your segmentations using subnet, you use your VLANs. But the world is adopting something we call zero trust right now. And zero trust is going from identity and then it comes down to network. So for network, we have zero trust network access, right? And for zero trust network access, we're looking at SDP, that's software defined perimeter. So this is more like an advanced VPN. Before now you use your VPNs where your customers come, or rather your vendors, maybe you have vendors that you partner with or people that work remotely. They want to connect to your network. They have to use VPNs, right? And then they log in just using credentials, and then you define using your NAC to, create access and all that. But we're saying that security is not enough. We're saying that you need things like entitlements. You need to do posture checks on devices before they enter your environment. That is where zero trust network access comes in, so app gates. So now look at it from this way. You have people coming in from outside your network into your network. And then you also have lateral movement from one device to another within your network. So we're saying that zero trust network access is when you protect your north to south and your east to west. That is the lateral movement, and then you're coming in from outside your organization. So for north to south, we have app gates, Zscaler, and the likes. And then for micro-segmentation, which is basically you segmenting your network beyond the subnets. Right now, the lowest form of segmentation we have is you just do subnets, and then whichever devices is within the subnet can speak to each other, right? But we're saying that you can segment down further to as low as workloads, as low as devices. Say, even if you have two systems in a subnet, they should not be able to speak to each other unless permitted. So this is a more granular way of segmenting your networks. And it also goes as far as onboarding IoTs and the likes. So you can see some of the OEMs we partner with there. There's Akamai, Illumio, Zero Networks. Network access control, yes, the one we're all familiar with and what it does. But I would tell you that if you have something like the SDP and the microsegmentation, you really do not need a NAC and a VPN anymore in your environment, because they will do beyond what those guys are doing for you currently. And here we have our next-gen firewalls, the names Palo Alto, Fortinet, and the likes. So endpoint security. For endpoint security, these are some of the OEMs. And endpoint security varies from EDR to patch management, unified endpoint management, where we have Qualys, we have CrowdStrike, Sentinel-1, and the likes. Disk encryption also comes for endpoint. So for endpoint protection, endpoint detection and response. So nobody's doing EPP anymore. We're now moving on to detection and response, right? Because now the EDRs are giving us that ability to, say, do threat hunting. It's not just you installing an antivirus and waiting for something to happen. You can actually go and be proactive about finding out something. So okay, you hear a news that a new threat is out there, you can just get your analyst to use the tool to search in your environment if it's already lurking somewhere, and then you can identify it before something is done to you. So and then moving on to application security. So we have various solutions across API security, web application firewalls, SAST, DAST, IAST. So your APIs, I know that some of the FSIs, you do API calls when you integrate with other entities, right? You do some API calls, and most times you don't usually know how many APIs are in your environment. So number one important thing is for you to have API discovery. You should be able to inventory your APIs, and then you should be able to protect your APIs. So some of these guys provide inline methods, some of them provide gateways that filters the calls between applications, right? And web application firewall for your web applications, obviously. We have some of the big names here. We have Akamai, Walam, Impeva, and then SAST. So your application process, for your developers, right? You develop your application, it's on staging, and then you push to live. So for the scanning of the application logic, right, to make sure that you're practicing secure coding, we have the SAST solutions that actually scans your solutions. And then the dynamic application security testing, when your application is in staging, these guys, these simulate attacks like SQL injections and the likes to test your applications and then give you reports so that you can understand the level at which your application is before it moves to live. And then there's also interactive application security testing. The difference is just that this guy uses sensors and agents in your server applications. You just install them and then it actively interacts with the application. It does what DAST does and what SAST does for you. And then we also have for mobile application security and load balancing. Moving on to data security. For data security, where we have data discovery and classification, I'm sure we all try to conform to one or two standards around, should I say GDPR? For Nigeria, we have NDPA, right? So, and these are tools that will help you comply and even help with your audit. So, data discovery, data classification, data masking, file integrity monitoring, database activity monitoring. So, database activity monitoring goes, you have things like DLP, right, and database activity monitoring. So they focus on different types of data, these solutions. So for your DLP, maybe your files, your cloud storage, and where your actual data are. And for your DAM, that's a database activity monitoring, focuses on your databases, like your SQL database. It goes as far as giving you alerts on your columns and rows if there are figure changes. Like maybe for an FSI, right, maybe money has been modified. Maybe a developer has actually gone using a backend or using a service account, right, to query the database and to change one or two things. You can get alerts real time. My time is going off, sorry. So then for identity security, right now they said identity is the new perimeter, right? Because there's a lot of attacks on organizations via identity. Nobody's really paying attention to identity. And identity, for identity security, we have identity and access management, privilege access management, active directory security, MFAs. So for identity and access management, right, you need to be able to automate your joiner, mover, leaver process in your environment. If you're not doing that right now, you have a big risk. So let me explain. So now, a new user or a new employee comes into your organization. How long does it take for you to onboard that person? How long does it take for that person to have access to what they need to do their job, right? And if an employee leaves your organization, how long does it take for you to take access off? So we have organizations where maybe an employee has used 30 years, he has acquired a lot of permissions over the years, now he's leaving the organization. How long does it take for you can you actually track manually and say, okay, this and this is what this person has access to and take it off? That's not possible. So you need something to manage your identity lifecycle because it is a big risk. If you have a disgruntled employee, the person can use whatever access is left during the time he has left your organization to actually harm you, right? And this is cases that we've seen in many organizations. For the PAM, we also have things like, you have legacy applications that you use that you don't want to put on the cloud. There's this crisis around hybrid environment. Oh, I want this to go to the cloud. I don't want this to go to the cloud. For example, your core banking apps. Now, your core banking apps are using, we've seen a lot of scenarios where your applications are using config files instead of services running in the environment. And these config files are easily accessed by your developers. They can just get the service account and use it to query the database. Now you see that money has moved and you can't even track it because when you are doing your forensic analysis, all you're seeing is this service account is what did this, but you don't know who used it because multiple people have access to it. So these are things that help you manage every type of account in your environment, wherever they may be, whatever you may use them for. So now, identity security is something that we need to start taking seriously in the FSI space. I will just quickly run quickly. Cloud security for the fintechs. For the MFBs, this is very, very important. You need to have a cloud access security broker if you have an hybrid environment. How are you managing access to your cloud resources? Cloud workload protection, vulnerability scanning for your VMs, for your containers, and security posture management. This helps you, scan your cloud environment to see where do I stand security-wise. And some of these things have policies and standards that you can plug in, ISO standards that would scan your environment and give you real-time recommendations and things that you need to, implement. Cloud, so let me move on. User security. So now we say humans are the weakest link, right? No matter how much you spend, no matter the billions you spend on your solutions in your environment, if you don't train the people, if you don't give them trainings or check their hygiene, right, in terms of how they keep things or how they use systems, it's as good as none. So we have security awareness training platforms that we offer and partner with. There's also phishing simulations that are being done so you can know which of your employees are actually adhering to these lessons that are being taught. Identify, so asset management, vulnerability management. I'm sure Qualys guys are going to tell you more about how you manage your assets and your vulnerability in your environment. Firewall audit, network audit. So this is basically auditing your firewalls, auditing your network devices in your environment. And all these things, most of these things, like this firewall audit, has plug-in standards. Like ArgoSec, for example, has PCI DSS plugged in, has ISO 27001 plugged in, and it's going to scan your firewalls across, give you reports and recommendations. So they also give you this secure score. So as much as say for example, it says, oh, there's a port open and you're supposed to keep it closed or the likes, and then you make that change, you can easily just go back and see, and then it shows you that, oh, your secure score is improving, right? Yes, and moving on to this, detect, respond, and recover. So this is basically just talking about what the tools you use to detect threats, to respond, and then to recover from them. So we have your SIEM, your SOAR, your threat intelligence tools, vulnerability assessment also, and autonomous pen testing tools. So you use, so where you have your SIEM to catch events, see events, it's just informational. And then you use your SOAR to orchestrate the responses. Maybe some of these threats that are known already, you can say, okay, I want you to do this when you see this, so that threats can keep moving on. And most of these tools now have, there's a lot of adoption around AI. I know this is about digital transformation, but digital transformation comes with automation, right? And then you're going to use probably agents, AI agents, agentic AI in your environment. So you need to also consider AI security as much as you're trying to. So we are bringing this as a package because we know that as much as you're trying to, adopt something to make life easy for you, digital transformation, automation in your environment, you also need to consider security. You also need to make sure that your AI models are being scanned and are secured. We have solutions around that focuses on two sides. So there's two sides to AI security, right? There is the development side, where you use your agentic AIs, you use your AI models, and you have tools that act as gateway between your LLM and your front end, right? To filter traffic, to protect you from jailbreaks and poisoning of your models. And then there's also the user part. Right now, you don't know if some of your employees are already using ChatGPT in your organization, in your network. They are prompting ChatGPT, they're prompting whatever AI is out there. So the other part of it is you look at shadow AIs, right? These are AIs that you are not aware of, that your employees are using. You need to be able to check, scan, and then protect your organization from these things. It needs to identify and notify you. You even protect data leakage, where somebody is trying to take a document and give it to AI to revamp it for him. Your data is in that document. You don't know where that data is going to. So these are the things. We'll be talking more on some of these things, and then we have govern, complying to standards and the likes. We have solutions that can make that easy for you. Whatever standards you're using here in Ghana or anywhere, you look at you look at organizational context, cybersecurity, IT risk management, and oversight. Sorry, I've gone beyond my time. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please a bigger round of applause for our two keynote speakers. First one was from Head of Products and Strategy of iOuranos, in the person of Mr. Raymond Madwogu, and you just heard from Yusuf Onelion, who happens to be Chief Information Security Officer at iOuranos. Wow, great information coming in. And well, I had information on Raymond. As for Yusuf, it's quite hard to hack security people. Who agrees? Anyone? We all agree? Good. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, time for us to get into our OEM presentations. And first on our list, he is the Chief Technology Officer of Odeon AI. Please, a round of applause for Julie Mene.
Thank you. So a bit of mismatch there. The name is Marvino, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Odeon AI. I'm CEO of Odeon AI. I'm a technical CEO. I have my CTO here with me, Warren Mene. So just correct the name. Thank you very much. It's a Saturday evening, and you decide to sit with your family to watch a Netflix movie, just to relax. You need internet, and you need, what else? Electricity to charge to power the TV or the computer, right? Do you get worried how to get that? No, you don't. You simply pay. You pay. You get your card, you pay for light, electricity, you pay for internet, and you have access to it. These are utilities. You don't worry about how to get them. Today, I tell you that intelligence is becoming a utility. You don't have to think how to get it. You have a task you need to do, you pay, and you get it done. I know everyone here has used AI recently. We use it at our work, and we see how it's improving every day. So what I want to achieve in a few minutes is I want to give you an overview of where the landscape of AI is. I want to establish the problem that enterprises face today when it comes to AI adoption, and also show you how that problem is solved, and if possible, show you a little demo that we'll enjoy. We have seen AI advance more and become smarter and do things that are really amazing. And so the question today is not, is AI smart? Can it achieve tasks? No. In fact, most of the enterprises here already are implementing AI in one way or the other. If you're not even implementing AI, trust me, your employees are using AI. And so the question no longer is how smart it is. The question now is, how do you execute as an enterprise? The moment you begin to try to explore AI, you are met with a few challenges. Cost, infrastructure, how to utilize infrastructure, high latency, limited visibility on your environment, no governance, and you have internal reliance. I'll go over this a little bit. When you try to implement AI in your organization today, the first thing you realize is that you need to mostly call the models that are offered by Western vendors. And immediately the costs are so high, they're really expensive. They're good, but they're expensive. We had the use case of a customer, a bank who tried to implement customer support with AI and for voice. And the bill they're getting is $400,000 per month. You can imagine. In Africa, you begin to weigh the benefits and the cost. What is the cost of actually hiring someone to just do the job than paying that amount of money? Another issue is even when you say, okay, let's deploy AI locally on premise. Let's try and cut costs. Let's have a deployment within our environment so we can control that cost. Well, you quickly realize that to run the models, the open source models, you need a GPU, a very powerful server, an NPU server, and it's really expensive. For example, apart from the expense, even having access to the GPU is really hard. Elon Musk has bought everything. He got all the GPUs, and so you can't get a GPU from NVIDIA till 2028. So how do you? And by the time you wait for 2028, your competitors have all advanced and done really well, and you're left behind. The other issue is high latency. Because we don't have GPUs in abundance in Africa, we quickly realize that you have to call API services or even rent GPUs online from cloud providers that are, the closest place you get is Ireland, not in Europe, Western Europe. And the latency is really, really, bad. And so how do you use that for customer support? If I call your AI customer support to complain and it takes so long to get a response, then it's not efficient. Then you try, let's say you go over all these hurdles, then you quickly realize when you start using the AI, the tokens start counting. You need to see what your investment looks like. As AI tokens, you're getting billed for tokens and usage. Where is the money going to? What is the impact? Is customer experience using the customer support AI? How much are we spending on that? Is engineering, are my engineers using AI? What are we spending on that? Like the previous speaker spoke about your engineers or your employees sending your data to AI. You want to control that. So you want to keep it within your on-premise. So when you do that, what are they doing? What's the cost of that? Then we have external reliance, obviously. So when we use the providers from the West, you quickly realize that you have to rely on them. So their APIs. So all your data gets sent over to them and they have access to your data. Now we establish what the problems are. I want to go over what some of the solutions or the value that we can get. And I will talk about the solution to the problems that we have. For enterprises today, we at Odon AI will suggest a few areas we know that you want to look at as you try to implement AI. We know that some of the key areas involve inference, fine-tuning on your data. If you want to have a deployment of your own AI models, you want to have AI workloads run on-premise, you need to make it smart to understand your company, to know how to respond to questions from customers, right? So you have to fine-tune. You also want to give it a large knowledge base of all your data. You also want to deploy voice agents for customer support, agentic AI for various automations within your organization, and engineering or coding. To do all of this, there are two parts, two ways to do this, right? You need, of course, today we have multiple choices. We have open source models we can get from the internet. They're good models, right? But to run them, you need to have a GPU or NPU, like I said. So we have basically today two ecosystems. Basically, we have GPUs by NVIDIA, we have NPUs by Huawei. And so they both are good in their own ways. They have advantages, right? So this is how we solve the on-premise AI, right? This is how we run AI within our on-premise environment. We get one of these. Now I'll tell you what each of these computes, the advantages that they have, right? If you look at what I have on the slide, you see that the GPUs from NVIDIA are very good for large-scale AI training. You want to train large models, you use NVIDIA GPU. If you want to run more inference, what is inference? It means when you want your users to prompt your AI. After training, then you deploy, and then it gets prompted. Then you can use MPUs. For foundational model training, of course, GPUs are very good in large models, very big models. You want to train something that's very big, like a Claude or GPT-5, 0.5. And then you have they have strong inference capabilities. These are optimized for large-scale enterprise. So you can see all the advantages they have. But let's make it simple. Let's make it clear. Enterprises today, the use cases I discussed earlier, may not require you to get a GPU, but it may require you to get an MPU. But MPU, you can run some of all these workloads on premise, and you can have access to MPUs. You don't have to wait 2028. This is how they work together, right? So this is your AI strategy. A simple diagram to show you what your AI strategy should look like. We have MPUs and GPUs, so you can get both in the environment. And you can notice that what we can do, first of all, is observe. So we, at Audion, provide you with a layer that allows you to observe everything that happens on enterprise. So you can see everything, all the token usage. And then we can take those that power from those servers and use them for voice agents, for internal engineering tools, for internal standard chatbots. And of course, you can fine-tune on your data and improve the models to learn more about your organization. So by the time someone calls your customer support AI agent and they ask a question, you have an agent that knows more information than any one person in your organization. And that's the goal. Now, let's be smart about how we implement AI. Of course, we said that these AI models require large GPUs, expensive, lots of clusters, and it's difficult to get. Of course, we have alternatives like MPUs that we can use for inference, right? But then, what really is the practical way to do it? If you notice, you do not need to train a large model like OpenAI has done, like ChatGPT, because you don't need that actually, right? What is smarter to do? Because to train a large model like that, you need a lot of GPU. You can't get them, right? They're hard to get, expensive. So what do? We find a smarter way. With our MPUs, we can get smaller models. We call them small models, big impact. I'll explain what this means. So you have a large brain. I want you to imagine ChatGPT or Claude, right? I know we've used those tools. The models that power those platforms are quite large. They're large brain. They're good at many things, many good things, right? But you notice that for enterprise, you have problems that cut across departments, inefficiencies you want to automate. You want to pay for this intelligence as a utility and execute it into each department. To do that, we have small models. So we take the model, the large model, we break it into bits, and we take the smaller models that we can train or fine-tune or improve with MPUs, for example, or even GPUs also. And we don't need so much GPUs anymore, so much MPUs anymore. A small amount is okay. And then you notice that we make these models specialized for different use cases. For example, engineering, customer service, knowledge bases, AI ops, and operations. Now, let me talk about one interesting part. Let's go use case by use case, right? Let's talk about engineering. If you use AI currently, I will tell you, I want to update you on something that happens in the industry currently. The industry is moving really fast. Before, what we had probably last year were AI models that we use to rewrite emails, of our work, give documents, summarize documents, do all of that, even coding. So you give it your code, you want to write a code, and it gives you the code back, you copy, and for engineers, they code and make applications faster. But we've moved past that. In 2026, what we have are coding agents. These agents are able to autonomously work on your projects. So that means that you can say, hey, I don't have to open my code base and copy code and paste and say, how do I solve this? How do I write this? No. We want to work on a project. We need a web app for our organization. We need a backend service. Can you work on it for us? An agent takes up the task and does that task continuously until they achieve the goal. Agentic engineering. And this has a profound impact. You know why? Because a task that takes you 2 months to build for an engineering team, that takes 3 days, 2 days. A task that takes 3 days to build, that takes 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour. So if you have a team of 300 engineers, 15 engineers can do the work of 300 engineers. And so you see, you can put your other engineers to good use. And this is what is possible on premise. So when you purchase your MPUs and you deploy on premise, we have these agentic models running on your infrastructure. Nothing goes out. It runs within your environment, and your engineers are all talking to that agent and working with it. You know the cool part about this agent that I like the most? Work doesn't end by 5 p.m. Yes. So by the time your engineers are leaving the office, no, it doesn't end. They can program automations, basically. Tell the AI, we have a task for you. We're leaving work once you work throughout the night and achieve the following goals, and we will monitor you. And you can set automations, and AI just works and works and works throughout the night. So even when everyone closes from work, your MPUs, your servers, your GPUs are still being utilized 100%. So your investment is not wasted at all. You use it to the full 100%, 24/7. This makes your team so much efficient. In fact, we have apps that allow you to even monitor these agents as they work, even from your home. Now, let's talk about customer support. For customer support, agents are now beginning to do amazing work that helps your support team become really, really, really efficient. So, what we do at Odin AI is we help enterprises across the continent to localize. We localize AI models for the African people, for your customers, for your consumers, for your users, so they can be able to call your support lines and talk to someone that sounds like them. And they're able to have a wonderful experience that doesn't feel different from talking to a human. And so this allows your customer experience team to have first level response. So not every problem that comes. You know, if you work in customer service, you know that people call for most times for the same problem over and over again. And it's redundant, and you just keep answering the calls. You ask them what the problem is. You know, they tell you, and you say, okay, hold on. You create a ticket for them, and technical team gets back to you. See that process? You could have your people doing more meaningful work and have AI agents take over that process. And we have localized models that are cheaper, way, way cheaper, and can run on premise. These models will allow you to be able to communicate to your customers in English and Twi, French, you know, whatever languages that suits you. I think at this point, I want to show a quick demo, so we see something quickly, how this works. I will play a quick video, and it's already open. Between an AI agent, a customer support AI agent, and a customer, and you see how we could use this for first level customer support or even first level sales, you know, when I call your hotline. So let's play. Thank you.
Hello, good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are. My name is Amara, and I'm here to assist you with any questions or concerns you might have about Silver Shield Insurance Limited. How can I help you today?
Yeah, I just got into insurance and I think I'm interested in it. So I just wanted to get some information about how to get started on insurance. Can you help me with that?
I'd be happy to help you get started with insurance. To begin, can you please tell me what type of insurance you're interested in? We offer various products such as motor insurance, health insurance, home insurance, travel insurance, and business insurance. Knowing which one you're interested in will help me provide more tailored information.
Okay, I think I'm more interested in health insurance. Can you tell me more about that? Something that can help me and my family.
insurance plans typically cover things like hospitalization expenses, surgeries, and medical treatments. The specific coverage and benefits vary depending on the plan you choose. To get a better understanding of our health insurance plans, I would need to know a few more details. Can you please tell me? 1. How old are you and your family members? 2. How many family members do you want to cover under the plan? 3. What is your budget for health insurance premiums? This information will help me provide you with more tailored information and options that suit your needs.
All right, I have some of this information, but you know what? I'll come up with a budget and I'll call back and let you know what I have so that you give me the best options. Is that okay?
That's perfectly fine. It's great that you're taking the time to consider your budget and options. I'm more than happy to help you when you're ready. Feel free to call back whenever you're ready and we can discuss the details. I'll be here to provide you with the information and help you choose the best health insurance plan for you and your family.
Thank you. So that's our little demo. As you can see, AI can be deployed as first level customer support. The interesting thing about this is that it doesn't just do conversations, right? We now have agents that are able to take action. So during the call, while you talk to the agent, the actions that needed to be taken can be done. So for example, if you need to create a ticket, the agent can do that. If you need to check a dashboard to pull the person's information, the agent can do that. If you need to reset something, the agent can do that. And so this allows for the customer experience team to be able to be more efficient. In fact, we're also having their human in the loop. So for example, if the agent cannot resolve the issue, they can transfer the call to your human agent or your customer experience team, and they can take it from there. And so this is how, one of the use cases where we have agentic AI helping to support your customer experience department. As you can see, there are many more departments that can be supported in your organization. It's finance. We could have agents that handle reconciliation, balancing of books. All of that can be automated and make it easy. We have for legal, reviewing of legal documents, drafting of legal documents. We have HR. We have marketing, sales, and all of that. So every department, rigs, internal audit, strategy, all have an agent they can use to make them more efficient, all running on premise, not going outside. The data is safe and secure in the organization. One last use case I'll talk about before I go is the rise of what we call computer use agents. So we have also seen this year that agents have become really good to the extent that they can now use a computer. So the tasks that you do redundantly every day, you have documents you have to fill in, you have to click on a few buttons to use a software, or use something, or use a tool to work. You have a lot of documents to review, or you have to browse the internet and do something on the browser. All of that action can be automated with AI agents. And so the agents can take a computer and click through and automate the work. So you can imagine that I use it also. For example, my Twitter page is not run by me anymore. I haven't made a post on Twitter, but I have over 100 and something posts on my Twitter account, and I did not make any single one of them. The agent, while working on my computer, takes a tab of his own and begins to open my browser, logs into my Twitter account, and drafts my post from my notes. When I put my ideas there, goes to the notes, reads it, go on the browser, and make a review, and makes the post every 2 hours. And so you see, that's efficiency. I don't have to spend time doing that. So tasks like this can be automated even across the enterprise and departments. And this is really going to make teams very more efficient. And we can let go some of the work. We can buy intelligence as a utility and use it to our advantage. Thank you very much. My name is Marvino, and I'll be at the back. If you have any questions to ask, anything, I'll be more than happy to help you out.
Excuse my English because it's not my first language. I may not have the fluency of our MC today. I would like to start with someone who is not in this room, a trader in a market in Kumasi. It's the end of the day. She is about to close, and before she does, she wants to send money to one of her suppliers. She pulls out her phone, dials the short code, and waits. The screen says processing, and then nothing. The session times out. She doesn't write a ticket to support. She doesn't tweet about it. She just tries again, and eventually it fails. Multiply that by a few 100,000 people and on a regular day, and there you have a problem that costs real money, revenue, and reputation for your company. That a problem that for most industry is almost invisible. And it's that invisibility that I want to talk about today. Because for the better part of the last decade, that's a problem we've been working on at Captivate. Here's the uncomfortable truth about digital service, and it's true whether you're a telecom network, a bank, or a mobile money platform. The dashboard in your operation centers are always almost green. Servers are up, latency is nominal, throughput is healthy, and yet your customers are quietly having a worse experience than screens will ever tell. Why? Because traditional monitoring watches the infrastructure, it watches the machine, the servers, but not the journey. The actual sequence of taps, waits, confirmation, everything that your user would go through. The gap between the system is up and my customer succeeded is where churn lives, where fraud hides, and where a great brand slowly erodes one timed out session at a time. Captivate exists to close that gap. So what do we actually do in one sentence? We experience our service, your service, the way your customer does, continuously before your user does. We call it active synthetic monitoring. But forget the term for a second and picture what it really means. Around the clock, on real device, real phones, real SIM, real browsers, Captivate runs the exact journey your customer ran. It dials the USSD code, browses to your website, sends the SMS, load the data session, measure it step by step. Not just did it work, but how did it feel? How long each screen took, where it stalled, whether the confirmation ever arrived. And we can tell the operator not just something broke, but where in the journey, on which channel, in which region, at which moment. Now, a few things make this hard to do well, and they are the ones I'm proudest in what we've built. The first is realism. It's easy to ping a server and call it monitoring. It's genuinely difficult to drive 1,000 of real transactions across devices and network the way a person would and do it reliably enough to trust. That's an engineering discipline, and it's the heart of our platform. The second is breadth. A modern digital service isn't one service only. It's USSD, mobile, SMS, browsing, often multiple operators under one group. Captivate is built to multi-channel, multi-operator, multi-tenant from the ground up. One platform, one pane of glass across a footprint that spans numerous operators in Africa and Europe, each with their own data cleanly separated, all monitored to the same rigorous way. Let me zoom out, because I think this matters more here than the technology does. In the market we serve, digital services are not just a convenience. For millions of people, it's the bank, it's how you pay school fees, receive a salary, and send money home, or run a small business. When a USSD session fails, it's not a minor glitch. It's someone, for a moment, locked out of a financial, educative, insurance system. So when we talk about monitoring a customer experience, we're really talking about whether the rails that carry the continent's daily economic life actually work for real people in real time. That's the stake, and keeping those rails honest, visible, measurable, accountable. It is to me genuinely important work. I'll leave you with this. Every organization in this room is making a bet that its customer will keep choosing it tomorrow. That bet is won or lost, not in your data center, but in the half a second a customer waits for the screen to respond in whether you even know what that half second felt like. You cannot fix what you cannot see. And for too long, our industry has been flying with its eyes on the engine and not the passenger. Captivate is how you put your eyes back where they belong, on the experience itself, on the trader in the market, on the person on the other end of that transaction, on what your customer actually sees. Because in the end, the system is up was never the goal. A customer who succeeded, that's the goal. Thank you very much.
Gentlemen, please, any questions for Mr. Emmanuel on how Captivate works? Okay. Mr. Emmanuel, you did mention that you wouldn't be so fluent as I am. I don't agree with you because I wish you were my co-host. Mais est-ce que tu es français? Est-ce que tu es français? Tu es français? Oh, tu es français? Je ne savais pas. Enchanté alors. Okay. I didn't tell anyone else, please. If anyone speaks French here too as well? Okay, that's fine. Ladies and gentlemen, to our next speaker. He is the technical account manager for QBS Qualis. Please help me welcome Mr. Stephen Nkwani. It's just been a small mix-up. So we're going to be having Tino Madamombe. She's from QBS, and she's a cybersecurity specialist. So she'll be doing the presentation, and then we'll have Stephen come next. Thank you very much.
Etiseng? I got it right? Yesterday I mumbled. Oh my gosh. I'm happy I finally got it. Anyhow, before we get into this discussion, who's voting for South Africa tonight? Show of hands. Mexico, right? Yes, yes, yes. Wonderful. So I'm Tinotenda, Madame Wombe, and I'm Zimbabwean, by the way. Yes, so Mexico it is, South Africa. Yes, it's. I was having dinner the other day with one of my colleagues, and he asked me, why are you so happy? You know, I looked at him and I didn't give him a response. I wanted to respond today, and I felt I'd share why I was feeling happy and why I've been joyous this week. Because I'm in Ghana. Who would not be happy in Ghana, right? It's the energy, it's the people, it's also the culture that I'm really excited to be part of. And most of all, it's being with you guys here in this room, having this discussion and seeing how we can secure Africa together. I'm coming from a company called QBS Software Africa, and we are a distributor. Our core business is cybersecurity solutions. We offer a vast number of institutions across Africa. Why I'm here, I just want to shed light so that you understand what it takes for companies like iOuranos to be able to supply you guys with the solutions that they have. For QBS, it's a 38-year journey that we've been in IT distribution. Mainly, we started off from the hardware space, and over the years, we slowly moved into cybersecurity. The early 2000s, that's when we took a more channel-focused approach, where we stand in as the distributor. You have your vendor, distributor, partner, and then obviously the product cascades down to you guys. It's very critical to understand that because we don't want you guys to be accessing gray market goods. Also, there's an element of support service that really refines the process and makes it a lot better for you guys in terms of consuming these products. I'm pretty sure you know that these vendors are based outside. The majority are found within Europe and across the world instead of here in Africa. So that channel makes it a lot easier for you guys to be able to operate and also get the service and the support that you require locally. We work closely with our vendors in ensuring that you guys are educated in terms of the solutions themselves. That's why we've taken our time to fly over from South Africa and be standing in front of you and, you know, let you know about the solutions that we have. So today, fortunately, I managed to bring two of our vendors through iOuranos. They really came through and they're like, we need visibility from experts who have these technologies and know how to really pitch them to you guys in terms of how to deploy them in your environments and to see the benefits of having some of these solutions. So this is our stack as QBS. We are part of a bigger company, a group called QBS. We are headquartered in the UK, but for us, myself and my colleague, I'm just gonna ask him to stand up, Mr. Luke Thompson. He's the head of sales for Africa, the whole of Africa. We're responsible in ensuring that you guys get these solutions. We were the first distributor to introduce Fortinet within the African market, and we've been growing. However, for West Africa, we are currently still, you have other distributors that you guys work with. We say this with so much pride. It gives you guys the surety that we know what we're doing with the level of experience that we've had over 38 years in positioning these cybersecurity solutions. For the vendors that we have Qualys and Nexan. I'm gonna ask my colleague, Mr. Stephen Kwame, to come in and do a presentation for you guys. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Tino, I wish today that I had half the energy that you have. I'm not sure what I had yesterday, but it really did affect my stomach. But I'm hoping that it's really not going to affect the presentation today.
And it's sad that he's saying that. I told him, come and have dinner with us. He insisted, no, I'm going to KFC, right?
Oh, you're always exposing me, Tina. But I'm really excited to be here. I wasn't going to say where I'm from for fear of retribution, but yeah, Tino just, exposed me, but it's all good. Very happy to be here, guys. My name is Mahlatsi Stephen Ongwani, and I am the technical account manager for Qualys. I'm not here alone. I came with my country manager.
Sorry, it looks like they can hear you. So
Oh, they can't really hear me.
maybe you could use.
Oh, I'll just get closer.
All right.
Yeah, I just speak with my hands, so. Hi guys, can you hear me now? Yes, so just to reiterate, my name is Mahlatsi Stephen Ongwani, and I'm the technical account manager at Qualys. And as I've mentioned, I'm not here alone. I came with my country manager. His name is Julian Michael. And if you could just stand so that they can see you, in case they may want to connect after the presentation. Thank you. I've got about 13 years experience in cybersecurity. And I pretty much specialize in helping organizations to improve their security posture by, reducing their attack surface. And this could be through policy formulation or developing processes or by prescribing out-of-the-box solutions. And today I'm going to be speaking about Qualys and how we can operationalize hyper-prioritization and autonomous remediation, and how we are able to move from attack surface management to risk-based surface management. Because if we really think about it, cybersecurity is a risk management exercise, right? And really our goal as cybersecurity practitioners is that we need to be able to reduce risk to an acceptable level. But most importantly, we need to be able to insulate and protect the company from any financial losses or disruptions. Sorry guys, I'm not sure how to use this. I need to get to, oh, I need to do it from there. Oh my goodness. There's a USB. Oh my goodness. Tina, you don't want to be kind enough? Anthropic, which is pretty much an AI research company, which is best known for creating the Claude AI family of assistants. And why is this important? This is important because with Claude Mythos specifically, it autonomously detects vulnerabilities, but what makes it even more challenging is the fact that it actually develops exploits for these vulnerabilities. So Anthropic actually selected about 40 companies to be part of the Glasswing project. And the idea is that these companies should proactively detect these vulnerabilities and of course release the fixes so that we can be protected in the event that these do get leveraged in an attack. So these companies, most importantly, is like your Googles, your Microsoft, they're really responsible for about 43% of CISA known exploitable vulnerabilities. So CISA actually keeps a database of vulnerabilities that have been exploited. And we see that about 43% of these are actually emanating from these companies. So Qualys isn't part of that, but we have partners with these companies from a remediation point of view. So as and when these fixes become available, we release them to you guys, all right? So risk is really a function of two things, likelihood and impact. So we know that the likelihood of this is going to be quite high because of the rate at which these vulnerabilities are being detected. But most importantly, we are seeing that the impact of this is really going to be quite devastating for organizations. The time to exploit is going to be drastically reduced from literally days to hours. And this is, of course, something that is worrisome. So let's look at what was happening pre-Mythos, right? So before Mythos, we're seeing that from a vulnerability point of view, we're seeing about a 6.5% growth in vulnerabilities. But what is even worrisome is the fact that the threat actors were taking about 18 days to actually exploit these vulnerabilities. But the broken physics of remediation is that it was taking, on average, organizations 67 days to fix these vulnerabilities. So that is really something that needs to be addressed. But the reality is that not all vulnerabilities have been weaponized, and vulnerabilities are not all created equal, right? But let's look at some of the timelines. Since from 2022, there was about 25,000 vulnerabilities that were disclosed. Following year, 28,000. In 2024, we saw about 38,000, or rather 39,000 vulnerabilities that were disclosed. And in 2025, there was about 48,000 vulnerabilities that were disclosed. The problem is we're currently using the CVSS scoring as a way to assess the severity of these vulnerabilities. And unfortunately, it actually lacks the granularity and the context around these vulnerabilities. And just to give you a sense, in these 48,000 vulnerabilities that were disclosed, about 70% of these vulnerabilities were either rated high or critical. And if everything is important, then nothing really is. But you see, under the weaponized, the reality is only 357 of those were actually weaponized. So we need to actually focus our efforts on the 357 vulnerabilities, as opposed to be looking at about 70% of vulnerabilities that have either been rated high or critical by the CVSS scoring. So the reality is we'll ultimately be looking at about 0.74%, less than 1% of vulnerabilities that actually require immediate remediation. So what is the path forward? The path forward is that we need to make sure that the speed of remediation actually matches the speed of detection. So the same way we're able to quickly discover these vulnerabilities, we need to also be able to remediate them. So with Qualys, we've created what we call ETM, which is Enterprise True Risk Management. And with Enterprise True Risk Management, not only are we able to identify, prioritize, but we can automate remediation. So how do we do this, and how can we operationalize our Risk Operations Center, and obviously and how can we be able to autonomously implement or institute remediation in our environments? So firstly, from a Qualys point of view, we're able to do this with AI speed detection. So we're able to rapidly discover these vulnerabilities. And most importantly, we're giving you a unified asset view, right? We're looking at your traditional IT infrastructure and your modern IT infrastructure. So anything that is sitting on premise, anything that is sitting on the cloud, IoT, SCADA environment, doesn't really matter what it is. We should be able to identify it. But most importantly, we should be able to take the necessary actions in order to protect it. The second thing that we provide you guys is hyper-prioritization. So we are able to prioritize these vulnerabilities and correlate them with all of the emerging threats. So we'll be able to look at the vulnerability and understand if this vulnerability is associated with some kind of malware or some ransomware, or if it has been, in fact, if there's maybe an exploit that is available, or is it trending in the wild. All of that information will help us from a risk prioritization point of view because of the threat intelligence that we receive. But most importantly, from a hyper-prioritization point of view, we're looking at how can we validate the exploitability of these vulnerabilities against your existing controls. And this is what we mean by hyper-prioritization, right? The idea is that we just not have to look at the theoretical risk of these vulnerabilities, but we actually have to test it against your existing controls. The truth of the matter is we've already invested so much money in the controls and EDRs, firewall, all of the multiple security tools. So we need to be able to validate, can that vulnerability evade your existing security controls? And then based on that, then we're going to tell you that that is the vulnerabilities that require immediate remediation because they pose an immediate risk in your environment. And then lastly, we've got zero-day remediation. With zero-day remediation, the truth of the matter is, or zero-day vulnerabilities, the truth is, with these, there are no patches, for example, that are available. So how can we mitigate against this type of vulnerabilities? The reality is that we need to be able to leverage some kind of virtual patching. We need to be able to leverage some kind of scripts in order to mitigate or reduce that risk. So if there is no patch, we could be able to apply a configuration change in order for us to be able to reduce the risk to an acceptable level. And then lastly, we can obviously automate this entire process from a remediation point of view so that as and when these critical vulnerabilities have been established or identified, we can take automated action against them. So these are some of the solutions that we have from a Qualys point of view that are going to look at those specific areas, which is the Qualys Vulnerability Management Detection and Response, Enterprise True Risk Management, and True Risk Eliminate. Hyper-prioritization. Okay, the first thing that we do, this is what we can do to help you build your own risk operations center. We know that security starts with visibility because we cannot plan, prioritize, or even protect what we don't know. So the first thing that we do is that we do the asset discovery so that we can know exactly what assets you have, where they are located, and so that we can also inventory them, right? So we can look at exactly what is contained in those assets, what software, what hardware is also running, if there's any end-of-life applications or end-of-support applications as well. Then once we've done the unified asset management, what we then do is that we look at your risk factor aggregation. And this is us looking at all of the multiple security tools that you have. The truth is, most of these tools, you've got these tools from different vendors and they're not really talking to each other. There is no integration. So the left hand doesn't really know what the right hand is doing. The EDR solution is telling you this is where your risk is. You've got another solution that is telling you this is what you need to focus on. So we'll be able to consolidate and bring all of those tools into one place. So we aggregate all of that data into one platform called the Enterprise True Risk Management. Once we've done that, the next thing that we do is the threat intelligence. So we augment our threat intelligence by correlating it with what we are seeing in the world. What threats are we seeing, and which vulnerabilities pose an immediate risk to your environment? Then we add the business context, and this is important because oftentimes we speak about risk from a technical point of view, but we are not able to translate this risk into business context. So how do we do this? By looking at how critical that asset is, and by also assigning a numeric value to that asset, right? So this is really going to help us understand what is going to be the impact of that, vulnerability should it be leveraged from a financial point of view. So that becomes very important. That becomes an easier conversation to understand monetarily how much is this going to affect my business should this vulnerability be leveraged in an attack specifically. Then once we've been able to add the business context, then we can move into risk prioritization based on the threats and based on the business context. And then we can then start coordinating our remediation efforts. And this is an automated way of remediating all of these vulnerabilities, especially the ones that we have validated that they have evaded our existing security controls. Then the last thing that we do is that we can help you to obviously meet your regulatory compliance requirements by helping you to assess and enforce compliance. Okay, so what does it look like? From a findings point of view, if we are able to consolidate all of these tools into one place, we are looking at about 62% or 62 million findings. So we can see the various sources. So if you've got your FortiGates, your EDR solution will be able to collect all of that telemetry from all of these assets, right? And then we take all of those findings, and then we move into our prioritization by correlating all of this with emerging exploits. Once we've done that, then we see the reduction from 62 million to 2.1 million vulnerabilities. So this is about 4% of only the vulnerabilities that we actually need to focus on. Then the next thing is that we apply our prioritization based on business context by looking at critical assets and what impact from a financial point of view that is going to have in our environment, right? And this is now going to drastically reduce this risk from 2.7 million to about 304,000 vulnerabilities. So now we are looking at less than 1% of vulnerabilities that actually require remediation. Then what we do at the last phase is that we look at our validation or with true confirm. This is where we look at your existing security controls and we try to validate it. So think of it as us running a penetration testing, but in a benign way, right? So it's a harmless penetration testing so that we can evaluate whether security controls, are they going to be able to detect and actually block that type of activity. So that is the validation, how we validate these vulnerabilities, that can they actually, with all of the investment that you've made, be leveraged in your environment should, by threat actors in an attack, that is. So this is how we are able from an enterprise true risk management to help you drastically reduce your risk by correlating and consolidating all of those multiple solutions into one place, then augmenting our threat intelligence, and lastly, automating remediation. Okay, so these are some of the Qualys ETM operational CTM for agentic AI. So firstly, we spoke about unified asset management. We did say from a security point of view, you cannot protect what we don't know. So that is the first thing. We give you a comprehensive asset management solution that is going to enumerate anything that is sitting in your internal IT infrastructure and external IT infrastructure. From an exposure aggregation, this is where we're looking at the multiple tools that you have, consolidate all of that risk findings into one place. And then, of course, we're also leveraging agentic AI to orchestrate remediation and for us to do the penetration testing and the automated remediation. Then we've got the true risk quantification. This is where we're able to look at the business context. We look at what assets you have in the business, and we assign a financial value. And this is looking at the impact. Should that vulnerability be leveraged, what is going to be the cost into your environment? Then we look at True Lens, which is our threat-based risk prioritization by looking at different threat actors around the world, right? So you are in the financial sector, we'll be able to look at what other threat actors are actually targeting the financial sector, where do they come from, and then based on that, we'll be able to also tell you what type of threats do they employ in those type of attacks. Then lastly, we've got True Confirm, and as I've said, we're able to validate this with your existing security controls by almost simulating a penetration testing and trying to evaluate how your security solutions are going to behave if that attack was to materialize in your environment. Okay, as I've spoken about True Confirm and agentic AI, so we are going to give you 3 outcomes, right, through this validation process. We're going to look at whether this vulnerability was exploitable because it evaded your security controls, whether it was in fact blocked by maybe your EDR solution, or if we're not able to reach the target system. So that is the 3 outcomes that you can expect from our True Confirm module. And this True Confirm, it works hand in hand with Agent Val, and the Agent Val is actually the AI agent that you're going to employ into your environment for it to be able to do automated remediation and to validate against your existing security controls. Okay. So how safe is it? We could see that about just last year, from a True Confirm or True Validation point of view, we were able to simulate about 8 million plus of these penetration test exercise, and we see that there's been 0 disruptions in the production environment. So we can say that this is quite benign and it's quite harmless, so you should be able to run this without experiencing any impact into your business. Zero-day remediation. As I've mentioned before, some of the vulnerabilities, there isn't a patch that is currently available, so we need to look at what else can we do to reduce the risk. And this is what we offer. There's a mitigation platform that we offer so that you can mitigate your zero-day vulnerabilities. And of course, once a patch becomes available, then we can always apply it in order to reduce the risk. So how can we trust autonomous remediation? Because we know that patches typically break systems, right? Patches are quite disruptive. They can even cause an erratic system behavior. So how can we actually trust these patches that we're pushing? The first thing is because we've got a patch reliability score. So for every patch that we're going to provide you guys, we're going to show you the reliability score so that you can have the confidence that that patch actually works. And how can I remediate if no patch is available or if it is not reliable? So we've got what we call the patchless remediation. This is where we leverage our mitigate module in order to push those configurations. So it could be a registry key that needs to be changed. We are going to do that with our mitigate feature in order to isolate or try to reduce that risk. Can I deploy in phases from least critical to most critical machines? Of course, we've got deployments waves, so you can actually stagger these deployments, right? And lastly, can I revert my remediations in case of unusual behavior? 100%. The solution comes baked in with the rollback function. So if for whatever reason that patch does break the system or cause an erratic system behavior, we can always institute a patch rollback so that we can restore that system to its earlier state. Okay, True Risk Eliminated. This is our coordinated approach to risk management. Like I'm saying, we're able to provide you with patch management for all of the vulnerabilities where patches are available. So this is looking at the entire OS coverage from Mac, Windows, Linux, or Unix systems. We can obviously, in an effort to reduce the risk, we can always uninstall things like bloatware. For example, you've got a database server, and you've got Google Chrome running. The reality is you don't need Google Chrome running on a database server. So in order to reduce that risk, let's just uninstall Google Chrome, right? Or we can block specific ports on the network that have been found to be insecure or risky, right? Then we've already spoken about mitigate, which is our ability to push configuration changes to the target machine. And then we've got custom scripts. These custom scripts, these are really handy for your first-party applications. If you've got a dev team, we can leverage Qualys in order to push those configuration changes to your first-party applications as well. And then lastly, in the event that there is no patch, and for whatever reason we cannot mitigate, then we can always isolate that machine entirely from the network. So this is just us blowing our own horn, but the reality is how do I go back? Yes, it's a battle-tested solution. This is a best-of-breed platform. So you can see just last year alone, we pushed about 150 plus patches just in the last 12 months, and we rated #1 by Gigamon, and you can see our automation actually works from a patch management point of view. We've experienced less than 1% of patch rollbacks, and of course, our solution is also powered by AI. So what is the impact going to be in your environment? We're going to see an 80% reduction in the average time to remediate. And this is important. We need to understand how long does a vulnerability survive in your environment, from the time of detection to the time that it takes for you guys to remediate that vulnerability. So we are telling you that by automating this process, we are going to see an 80% reduction in your mean time to remediate. And this is very important because we know Microsoft releases patches on every second Tuesday of each month. So the idea is that we need to look at how effective is our remediation program. So we can now actually automate this entire process because we've got the patch reliability score, for example, and we've got the ability to do a patch rollback in the event that, of course, there's issues with those patches. Then less than 1 day to remediate zero-day vulnerabilities, because now we provide you with the ability to mitigate this vulnerability by instituting configuration changes on the target machine. And then, as I've mentioned, we've got a less than 0.1% rollback rate. So we can confidently say that the patches that we do provide, 99.9% of the time, they're going to work without any issues. Okay, I think this is going to be where I'm going to draw the curtains. This will be my last slide, where I'm just going to be quickly giving a T20 synopsis of the products that we have from Qualys. And we can see that this is just one platform. We're only leveraging one agent. So you just need one agent, and in the background, we can activate all of the modules that you want. And this is based on a modular architecture. In other words, it means that you will buy the module that obviously speaks to your industry or the one that you require the most. So firstly, CSAM, this is our cybersecurity asset management. We're going to look at your entire inventory, tell you if you've got end-of-life software, end-of-life applications. Then we've got our vulnerability management detection and response. We've already spoken about this, where we can detect vulnerabilities, add threat intelligence, correlate this with all of the emerging exploit, so that we can show you which vulnerabilities pose an immediate risk to your environment. And then we've got Total Cloud. We've already spoken about Total Cloud, like CNAP, Cloud Posture Management. All of that is currently available. We've got True Risk Eliminate, which is the main platform where we're able to plug in different security solutions so that we can look at all of the risk findings from these solutions in one consolidated dashboard, and we can obviously do the validation to understand which of these vulnerabilities can actually be leveraged in your own environment should an attack materialize. And then we've got the custom assessment and remediation. This is for your third-party applications. We give you the ability to write script, make configuration changes. That is something that you can leverage from our platform. We've got a library of scripts that you can obviously leverage out of the box. And then we've got policy compliance. Then, of course, this is one important area. You need to comply with specific frameworks, and in this case, we've got all of the frameworks that you can think of. We can even create custom frameworks. We can help you tailor these policies so that they obviously speak more to your organizations. And what is important is that we don't only assess and enforce these policies, but most importantly, we can help you to automate the remediation or apply the fixes for these policies. File integrity monitoring, that is something that we do. Again, we're going to look at some of the changes, any file changes that have made to the any changes that have been made to the files, any changes to the registry, all of that is going to also be leveraged as part of our solution. We also have endpoint detection and response. This is, of course, for real-time detection. You probably have an endpoint solution, so you know what that does. And then we've got total AI. I think we've already spoken about AI, but it gives us the ability to detect and make sure that all of your AI models are, in fact, secure. And then Total AppSec. Total AppSec, this is where we are looking at web application scanning. We extend this capability as well to your APIs, and we also do malware detection as part of this. So if you think about the OWASP Top 10, you'll get that as part of the Total AppSec. And then lastly, we've got the Enterprise True Risk, and as I've mentioned, this is a unified view where we're able to plug in different solutions that you have, whatever solution that you have. We use an API. We can ingest that data into Qualys. We can help you determine your risk tolerance. We can help you assign a financial value to all of your critical assets, especially the ones that are revenue generating. And of course, from a risk point of view, we'll therefore understand if there is a vulnerability that exists in an application that is critical for business, and we can understand what is going to be the financial impact should that vulnerability be leveraged in an attack. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. This is where I'm going to draw the curtains.
And it had to be you, yeah.
Hello, my name is Joshua. Please, you're talking about college handling vulnerability, remediation, and then patching. Does it also handle, or how does it handle the downtimes? As when we patch systems,
Absolutely.
it has to go with downtime.
Indeed.
We have some critical systems that we don't want them to go through the downtime,
Yes.
which can impact revenue and other things. So how do this handle it?
So by downtime, you're referring to the time that organizations are going to dedicate for the patch management, for patching, right? For performing their remediation. Is that what you mean by downtime?
Yes, please.
Yes.
And also, when a system is being patched, most of this patch, let's say for example, Microsoft receives the patch, and then after applying the patch, the system has to go a downtime for the patch to take effect.
For that?
For the patch to take effect on the system.
You have to reboot. You have to reboot it, right?
Yes,
Yes.
So is this going to eliminate the downtime, or we still have to go through the same system?
Yeah.
So when it comes to that, this really depends on the patch that is being applied. The patch would then precipitate whether it actually requires a reboot or it doesn't require a reboot. So if you think of browsers and some of the patches that we provide, depending on what we're patching, it may not necessarily precipitate a machine reboot. But we see that a lot of the security patches that are being released, they actually require you to actually reboot that system. The good thing is that from a Qualys point of view, we've got very granular, we give you the flexibility to actually configure your patches based on, or your remediation program, based on your schedule, right? We can even have a window that we can specify from the platform to say, push these patches within this period of time. And those patches will only be pushed between those period of time, and will make sure that it does not overlap into anything like into your business hours or anything that can impact perhaps the performance or anything like that. So we've got a lot of, it's just that unfortunately today I'm not doing a demo because I was only given 15 minutes to speak. But the reality is, if I had the demo, I would show you exactly how we've got the wizard that we can create all of these patch jobs and the granularity that we have from a patching point of view.
Okay, please, any other questions?
Yes, please. I'd be happy to take more questions.
Anyone?
Yes. I don't know, I just can't help it, right? My parents definitely were happy when they made me.
Any other?
Technical questions, please.
Any other? Okay, all right. Please, a round of applause for Stephen. Great. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, we are going to take a quick break, stretch. But before we do that, please, some small papers have been passed around. That's a QR code. We'll entreat for everyone to please kindly scan the QR code. Please do. Also, right from here, we're all going back to the backdrop. We're going to take a big, huge photograph together. It's a group photograph, okay? And then please kindly just stretch. We're doing this in about 5 to 10 minutes. We're not going to take long. Pick whatever you want to pick. Please just come back to your seats, and then we follow up to two of our OEM presentations again. It's midday. We should be done by 2. We don't want to keep you too much here, but yes, we are all here for one good purpose. So please, 5 to 10 minutes, but right from here, we want all of us to please go to the backdrop. Let's have that group photograph, and then you can pick whatever you want to pick, and then you can come back to your seats. Thank you very much for your cooperation. Still on our OEM presentations. And so we'll move to our next speaker. He happens to be the regional representative of Dion, and he is in the person of Mr. Olufemi Kolade. Please, a big round of applause for him as he comes through. Okay.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Can you all hear me, please?
Hello? Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, please, the second session has started, please. All right, thank you very much for your cooperation. Thank you. All right.
Thank you. My name is Femi, like you introduced. I work for Dayon, and I represent Dayon in Africa, West Africa, precisely, right? I'm going to be very straight to the point and quite fast about my presentation today, right? When I got the invite from iOuranos, the iOuranos team, and I saw the event topic or theme, I did what most people would do. I went to my Microsoft Copilot and I asked it, right, to define digital transformation in the context of banking and payment. And it threw up a couple of words, right? All nice words: encryption, authentication, real-time, transaction monitoring, cloud infrastructure, data privacy, API, and so on. But 3 out of these words stood out to me, basically. One is digital identity. The second is trust. And the third one is convenience, right? From the perspective of organizations like yours, banks, right, you want to be sure who you are interacting with, who you are dealing with, on the other side of the channel. So digital identity is very, very key to you. From the point of the customer, they want to have trust in any organization where they put their money or where they are making payment through, right? And between the bank and the customer, convenience is key, right? As a bank, you want to deliver your product in a very fast way, right? Across channels, across platforms. As the customer, you want to receive these services, in a very comfortable way. You want to be on top of your bed and, be able to consummate a transaction, right? Be able to check your balances, be able to log in into any of the digital platform that your bank provides, right? So, to a bank, right, what is digital identity? And there's no gainsaying that, we are in the age of identity crisis, right? No thanks to AI, right? Identity theft is on the rise. Identity is the new attack surface. And if you look at some of the statistics there, the first one is 1.5 million identity thefts reports projected in 2025. By the way, these stats are for 2025. So imagine what it is now in 2026 and beyond. 1 in 20 identity verification attempts involve impersonation fraud. That's big. 46% of business report increase in deepfake and AI fraud. By now, maybe that will be like 70%. So as for organizations, you're concerned about fraud. You're concerned about digital theft, digital identity theft. You're concerned about, how your customers perceive your bank, your channel, your products. For the customer, there's a trust gap, right? They believe that whatever they do with you needs to be secure. And that's why 97% of them say fraud prevention is critical when they choose a bank, when they choose an organization to, do payment through, right? When they choose a product. 57% says, right, they are concerned about transacting online. And who would blame them, right? You need to be careful where you put your money. You need to be careful where you put your password. You need to cross-check if you receive a link to ensure that the link is coming from the bank. These days, in fact, there are tools that help you check if the URL of your bank is actually from the source, right? So as a consumer, the trust gap is there, right? And it's quite interesting because we are in an age where we have, everybody's digital, right? So the digital engagement is really high, but confidence is low. And you ask yourself, why? Next slide. So you would think if the bank or the organizations, if they have problem with digital identity, if the customer does not have trust in the bank, then we can always say, okay, thank you. There's no need doing business. But the reverse is the case, right? Because 76% of consumers still prefer digital banking than traditional methods of banking, than walking into a branch or a kiosk to do transaction, right? That's paradox. 91% consider digital banking capability when choosing a bank. So they will ask you, do you have a mobile app? Is your mobile app efficient? Can I transact using your web, right? Can I go to the branch and do self-service without someone, waiting for someone to attend to me, right? So it's critical, right? So the question now becomes, how do you as an organization, right, deliver a seamless, frictionless experience without compromising security to your customers? The next slide. Right. That's where Deon comes in. Right. We're a global company. We've been around for 26 years now. Headquarters in Ireland, but based across the globe. And basically, we're a digital identity trust company. And what does that mean? We help you provide identity assurance to the people you interact with, regardless of the channel, right? Regardless of the modality. So we use biometric, that's face, voice, fingerprint, iris, and non-biometric capability to assure the identity of users that interact with you, right? And some of the stacks there just speak for itself, right? We presently, I don't know how many of you know FIDO Alliance. It's an acronym for Five-Star Identity Online. It's an organization that is a collection of tech companies, the likes of Google, Apple, Samsung, that came together some years back and said, they want to eliminate the use of passwords, right, and leverage more around biometrics, right? And from day one, we've been a member of FIDO Alliance. Presently, we're a board member of FIDO Alliance. And what does that say? How does that, interpret to you guys? It means our solution is peer-reviewed. It means we, as a solution provider, we are at the forefront of biometric authentication, identity verification, the cutting edge, the race against AI fraud, right? So it sets us apart from, most vendors, practically all vendors out there, right? Next slide, please. So what is our solution? What do we do, right? We provide end-to-end identity continuity for you as an organization, right? So as a bank, for new-to-bank customers, we provide identity verification, identity proving, KYC, eKYC, whatever you want to call it. And once that individual is now a customer of the bank with their own account, we help you authenticate this user, validate them, verify them as they interact and transact with you, right? Regardless of the channel, right? So if the user wants to log in into the mobile app, we can help you with authentication. If the user wants to consummate a transaction, we can help you with the authentication. If you want to provide multi-factor authentication, right? Biometric and non-biometric, we can help you with that. If you want to authenticate the user when they call into your contact center and you want a seamless experience where you authenticate them with their voice pattern, right, we can help you with that. So in a nutshell, we can bring someone that is unknown to the bank, right, to become a customer of the bank, right, or basically any institution, payment institution, right, and help you throughout that life cycle interaction with you, right? And of course, you get better engagement. When a customer has trust in your product, in your channel, you get better engagement. You reduce cost because what we are providing is one platform, a single platform that helps with identity verification, authentication, right? So you don't need to have 5 different platforms from 5 OEMs or 5 vendors, doing the same thing that we can do, right? So in the long run, you have a lower total cost of ownership, right? You have better operational performance. And most importantly, you prevent fraud, AI fraud, impersonation, right? Which is quite prominent these days. Just by extension, our capabilities, we are not limited in terms of a particular section or area of interaction. We are not limited by the channel of interaction, right? So right from the get-go, right from when the user, tries to make contact with the bank, we do what we call device intelligence, right? Of course, checking if the device has been jailbroken, if the device has been downloaded, or if the app has been downloaded from the right source, right? To helping you to know your business or know your customer's business. So we provide KYB functionality, right? We support currently over 21,000 documents. What that means is, regardless of the country where your customer resides, we are able to scan OCR and validate the document, government-issued document that they're going to provide to you, right? And we are extending that to EIDs and mobile driver's license. And I'm sure that's, is something that is taking root in Europe, and I'm sure in the next couple of years, it will definitely come down to this side. Fraud prevention is a very key core of our capability, right? We are at the forefront of AI prevention, right? And we do this multi-layered, right? We have injection attack detection capabilities. We have deepfake detection attack capabilities, right? Whether you're using face as a customer, you're using voice, or you're using any of our other capabilities, functionalities, we do what we call AI registration, basically tracking if those documents or that facial image or that voice pattern was generated by an AI tool. And the extension, we do screening, all types of screening, from ALM to sanctions to PEP, adverse media, right? And to crown it all, we provide ongoing authentication and trust, right? Like I mentioned earlier on, once the user or the guy is a customer of the bank, right? Whatever he wants to do subsequently, we can help you authenticate this user, right? Next slide. Just to give you an idea in terms of, our customer base, right? Like I mentioned earlier on, we're a global company, so we have customers practically in every continent, right? And customers across all sectors, But surely our biggest sector is, the financial space and payment. And some of the biggest brands, you would expect to see are there, right? We definitely have a growing footprint in Africa. Right now, we have presence in about 16 African countries, right, including Ghana, right? But aside from the banking and financial services space, we play prominently in government and public sector. Our biggest customer in government is the United States, where we provide, authentication verification for airports and airlines across the United States. Travel and hospitalities, we help, for visa authentication verification, right? And airport, verification also. When a user comes to the airport and you want to take, their face image to verify against what's on the passport. And, telecoms, identity service providers, gaming, crypto, and we do have an extensive array of partners, local partners, that help us, not only in terms of delivering our product, but also supporting, right? And, iOuranos has been a very wonderful partner in that regard, and that's why we're here to support them, right? So basically, Deon is a global company that helps you with identity proving, right? Authentication, biometric and non-biometric. Helps you with identity assurance, prove the identity of that individual that is coming or knocking at your door, right? And ensure that they are who they say they are. Next slide, please. Maybe I'll just skip this because it speaks for itself. Why Deon? If you look at it, I started by saying there were three words that kind of jumped to me. It was digital identity, trust, and convenience. And the question I was told that this conference is trying to ask is, basically, what's the future of digital transformation, right? I tried summarizing this, on this slide, right? Future of digital transformation is simple, right? Digital trust, right? And the foundation of that digital trust is identity of your users, right? If you get that right, you get that foundation of digital trust, right? And from our perspective, and already we are seeing that, the future will be passwordless authentication, where you don't need to have any password. You use your face, right, and authenticate, right? It's going to be AI-driven. Right? And whether we like it or not, AI is already driving that, whether through fraud or otherwise, right? Digital wallet is becoming pronounced. In fact, I think, was it this year that the EU is trying to formulate a policy around, digital wallet, where you have your digital information in the wallet and you can reuse across entities, organizations, products, services. And the last one is continuous authentication, right? We are in an era where everybody is digitally aware, right? And you need to continuously authenticate users to ensure that you're talking to the right person. And I would just add one more, right? The future of digital transformation is day on, because we are well positioned to help you in collaboration with our local partners, right? To help you achieve your goals, to help you provide that seamless digital footprint or digital services to your customer while not compromising security. Thank you.
Okay, so big congratulations to Mr. Olafemi. Thank you very much. Any questions, please, for him? No questions? Okay, all right. If there are no questions, then we proceed to the next speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, he happens to be the Territory Manager of Africa of Nexon. Please help me welcome Mr. Byron Horn Botha. Please, a big round of applause for him.
For Nexan, looking after Africa. With me, I've got my colleague, Adrian Hedges. Adrian is our EMEA Sales Director for Nexan. And, I was trying to think, we just listened about digital transformation and banking and financial and all the rest of it. Ultimately, we all involved in the finance sector in some shape or form, right? Because whether we are using it on an individual basis or we work for a financial institution, we're involved in that space. From a Nexan point of view, we are a storage vendor. We have been in the industry for over 25 years, and we manufacture our own storage, right? So we manufacture based against your requirements, based against what you need within your organization for varying data sets. Now, particularly in the financial sector, you are dealing with longer retention periods. You are dealing with a lot of internal governance risk and compliance that's being pushed down from a policy perspective, but you are also dealing with external legislation coming across, whether that's on a global level or on a local level. And all that does is it creates more data, but it also means that the data has to be secure, right? And to secure the data, you need secure storage. And that's where we come in, right? We offer you that secure storage element. We focus on reliability and durability. That goes without saying. We follow a multi-step process to ensure the goods that we deliver to our clients are fit for purpose and best-of-breed technologies. And of course, we've got global presence in over 60 countries because we've been around for over 25 years. And we also offer, worldwide support should you have any questions or queries. This is just a snapshot of who our customers are on a global level. As you can see, we cover a lot of industries, a lot of verticals, and these are all for different use cases. Some of these span across virtualization, backup, DVS, it doesn't matter, right? Basically, if we can see the data, we can store the data, and we can secure the data. So just a quick snapshot of some of our technology alliances. So this is not all of them, but these are just some common names that you would come across within the industry. Veeam from a backup point of view, Commvault from a backup point of view, Arxo from a backup point of view, and then from a virtualization point of view, Hyper-V, VMware, Proxmox, KVM, OVM, etc. And then we also integrate with Scale, which is quite a new one, Scale being an HCI vendor, and Milestone from a DVS and CCTV perspective. Okay? So a quick snapshot of the product portfolio. Sorry, this is just too difficult. Okay, that's better. Sorry, I can't stand like this. Now I can move. Ooh, now I've got freedom. Okay, cool. Whew, getting cooped up. Okay, now I can actually do my presentation properly. Okay, let's start over. Rewind. Everything I said before was nonsense. Okay, brilliant. So our product portfolio covers an extensive array, right? Because obviously we're addressing across the SMB, mid-market, enterprise market. We focus on enterprise-grade solutions. So it doesn't matter if you are a small company with 50 terabytes only, or 20 terabytes, or you've got petabytes worth of data. You're going to get the same quality item from a Nexan perspective. And that leads me into the product portfolio. Obviously, because we are dealing with different use cases, we're dealing with DVS environments, we're dealing with backup environments, we're dealing with virtualization environments. You need a solution that's going to fulfill that use case, be a best-of-breed technology, store that data in a secure manner, but it's also going to scale with your organization as your data demands change and grow, right? Because as we know, data growth is no longer linear, it's exponential, right? So to start off with our product portfolio, we have the E-Series. The E-Series is focused on SAN or DAS storage that you've come to kind of know and love. It's a highly scalable solution. I am going to get into the more technical aspects of it, so I'm not going to spend too much time explaining it. Then we've got Assurion. Assurion is our governance, risk, and compliance certified storage. So essentially what we've done there is we've taken immutable storage and put it on steroids. It comes in a clustered pair, meaning an active and a failover for redundancy, meaning the data gets replicated from one side to the next as and when changes get happened. But then to take it one step further, anyone can do immutable storage, perhaps, but we've added an OS layer on top. And the OS layer essentially does a lot of the legwork around what you would find in zero trust architecture principles from a security point of view. So that does file fingerprinting, monitoring of the data, looking for changes, and it also acts as an early alert system for ransomware within your environment because it can detect anomalies or changes that are happening to that data, right? Where you would deploy this is for critical data sets. You wouldn't put, just random files on it. This would be for your critical business operations, for the data that you cannot afford to lose as an organization. And most of you in this room cannot afford to lose your data. No one can actually afford to lose their data, which brings me on to the Unity solution. The Unity solution is our immutable storage solution. And it's our flagship solution. It's the one that we kind of have a lot of questions and queries about because it is so versatile from a scale perspective, but also from a use case perspective. So from a scale perspective, we can scale within the Unity range from 40 terabytes up to 20 petabytes. And then it's also immutable, which is provides security. So for longer retentions, you're getting that granularity and security. And then it also supports multiple protocols, right? So it doesn't matter what the protocols are in your environment, we can support it. All our solutions, you can have different types of disk, which I'll mention. So just know that we are very flexible in our approach and how we engage with you. Then last but not least, we've recently launched the VHR for Veeam solution. And essentially what we've done is we've taken the Veeam hardened repository ISO that you can utilize, and we've supplemented it with Nexan storage. Now, anyone can do that, right? But you want to be secure across your entire layer. So what we did was we have secured we secure the software, obviously using the hardened repository ISO, but then we've taken it one step further and locked down the device itself, right? So actually locked down the BIOS, IPMI, no one can get root level access. And that's very important. It also scales on demand. It aligns to Veeam's scale out backup repository architecture. And you can also just, and it comes with a 5-year support contract as standard. So this is really designed for Veeam environments, and it's been certified, validated, and tested by Veeam. So the E-Series and Beast. As I said, I was going to give a little bit more insight into the solution. So from the E-Series and Beast perspective, as I said, it's a SAN or DAS solution. You can support multiple connectivity types, flexible RAID configurations. It's high density, but it has a really cool feature called Automate. And Automate, essentially what that does is it adjusts the speeds of the disk when not in use. So say, for example, you were using an E-Series or Beast for a backup environment. Your backup windows would probably run in the evening between, let's say, 6 p.m. and 5 a.m. But then for the rest of the time, it's sitting idle. You don't want those disks running at full tilt all the time. So in the time of the backup window, it will run at 100%, and after that, it will slow down the speed of the disk. The nice thing with that is that that allows for longevity of the disks because they're not running all the time constantly when not in use, but it also gives you energy savings and cost savings from that perspective because the device is not consuming as much energy and power. Again, you can have a mixture of spinning disks or SSD, and you can scale the solution. All our solutions are scalable, so we've got the E-Series and the Beast to complement larger data sets. Where we typically deploy the solution is for high-performance applications, virtualization or cloud infrastructure, big data, DVS environments, CCTV footage, which is becoming more and more prevalent, and backup replication and archival. Then we've got the Unity range. As I said, Unity is our really most diverse solution. It's the solution that we have a lot of discussions around because of the immutability, because of the ability to support S3 object stores, which means we can send data to the cloud, but we can also bring data back from the cloud. There's a lot of data repatriation happening at the moment where people are moving away from the cloud, whereas before they had invested in the cloud, and now they're bringing the data back on-premise due to data sovereignty, due to security, due to visibility, and because there's something called cloud cost shock. Again, support for multiple protocols, inline compression and deduplication is important because that obviously gives you storage savings. And then we've got a layer called the fast tier layer. So the fast tier layer is typically where we deploy either NVMe or SSD, and we can create the size of the fast tier layer. But what that does is it creates a caching zone, and essentially it speeds up and optimizes the performance of the spinning disk. So you get optimal performance and throughput from your spinning disk technology. And again, we can use a variety of different disks, whether that's spinning disk, SSD, or NVMe. And we can scale up to 20 petabytes within a system. So it's a highly scalable solution, but we're not only speaking to the enterprise, we can speak to any organization. Where we deploy this is around companies requiring that object storage, backup recovery, ransomware resilience in general, and for virtualization and enterprise workloads, as well as data archiving. The VHR series are covered, but essentially what this is designed for is exactly that, Veeam environments. So if you are a Veeam client and you're looking for Veeam storage, this would be the solution that we would consider. It aligns to the Veeam architectures such as the SOBA scale-out backup repository architecture, and it's also validated and tested for Veeam. Obviously, the use case for this is backup, okay? Right? And securing your backups. The Asurion. So as I said, the Asurion it's a complex solution in the sense that it has so many elements of security to it to protect your data. Again, comes in a clustered pair, so you can have that replication of data, and then also does the integrity checks on the data, checking for consistency. And this provides you with the full chain of custody, as well as governance, risk, and compliance ready. Okay, so current storage trends. There's a lot happening in the market at the moment with storage, and I'm sure some of you know that it's wild out there, right? Cloud cost shock is really becoming more and more prevalent because a lot of people went to the cloud thinking that the cloud was the panacea to all evils, but as we've well seen, it's not. And a lot of people are concerned about the ongoing cost of cloud, meaning that the cost keeps on rising on a daily basis. And that's very difficult for CFOs to justify when creating a budget or a forecast, right, for the next financial year. Security, of course, is of utmost importance, and this I just want to spend a little bit of time on because it's remiss of me. The one thing that we're all trying to do here today, right, we've heard from a lot of vendors, and there's very good solutions from these vendors, but the one thing that we're trying to protect the most is our data, correct? Right? And therefore, when you store your data, do you store it on cheap and cheerful NAS devices, or do you store it on enterprise-grade, secure storage? Enterprise, exactly. And that's what a lot of companies are now realizing, is that you have to have security around your storage, because the more the data grows, the longer you have to retain it, it needs to be more and more secure. And I'll get into some of the reasons and artifacts as to why. So then we've also got hybrid and multi-cloud. So again, we're not anti-cloud, but if you wanted to go and send data from the cloud, we can facilitate that. We can also bring data back from the cloud. Data growth is exponential. We know this. It's going to keep on growing. Companies, before I could have a discussion with companies and I'd say, how much data do you anticipate your year-on-year growth would be? And they'd say like 5, 10, 15%. Now you go and have a discussion with companies and they say, I can't actually give you a number, right? Because the data is growing at such a rate, it might be 100% in a year from now. So therefore, it needs to be high performance as well. Different workloads require different types of disk technology, for example. So you need to be able to facilitate that, and that's something that we can do. Again, energy efficiency, particularly in Africa, is very important, so it needs to be energy efficient so that you can get those cost savings. And most importantly, it needs to support AI analytics and data lakes. We've seen the prevalence of AI. We've discussed AI at length. We know it's here. We know it's going to stay. You need to have a mechanism in place to ensure that you can facilitate AI requirements from a storage perspective. And we are AI ready. So our solutions are AI ready, and we can store or help with AI environments. The multi-layered approach. A lot of this was already covered by someone else. I just can't remember who the speaker was, but someone did mention the layered approach. And this is essentially what we've all been doing, right? On the left-hand side, you've got a house protected by a brick wall. On the right-hand side, you've got a house protected by a brick wall, CCTV, alarm system, dog, right? If I was a criminal and I wanted to break into a house, which house do you think I'd be breaking into? Well, maybe I like a challenge. Maybe I'm going to go to the second house. Yeah. Come here, puppy. It's all good. So obviously the one on the left-hand side is the easiest target, right? And that's because there's less layers involved or less security involved. And when we protect our organizations, what we do is we deploy solutions in a layered approach to protect our data at all stages and phases, whether it's from a development point of view, whether it's production data, it doesn't matter, right? There's different tools and mechanisms that we use to facilitate the multi-layered approach. But what happens if what happens if a hacker wants to be a bit like me and likes a challenge and wants to get into your organization even although you have multiple layers? they will try and they might gain entry and probably will gain entry because where there's a will, there's a way. And sometimes solutions aren't deployed correctly and tools aren't deployed correctly. So therefore, if you get through all these layers, ultimately they're going to get to your data. And therefore, your data needs to reside on secure, immutable storage. The security, the immutability provides you with that peace of mind that you will always have a point in time to recover your data, because that is what's most important. When you get hit with ransomware, when you have an outage, when something goes wrong, you need to access your data fast, you need to bring up systems fast, and you need to ensure continuity in business operations. So therefore, store your data on secure, on secure storage. So governance, risk, and compliance in the world of storage and cybersecurity and everything that we're seeing. Data is the lifeblood of the organization, right? You lose your data, it goes without saying you might have to shut down operations or you might have to move on. Data sovereignty, security, repatriation is real. We're seeing it a lot in Africa. A lot of African countries are bringing data back in country because of the security risks, leaving it outside of the country with other hyperscalers, for example. Retentions are increasing. You in the financial industry, the retentions are getting wild. We had a discussion earlier this week with a CIO, actually a CISO, and asked him the question. I said, how long do you want to keep the data? And he said, probably forever, right? Or until I retire. And the reality is that the next CIO who comes in after he's retired will say the same. Because you need to keep the data for longer, because you never know when a policy is going to be implemented within the organization or externally that's going to require you to provide that data. Or you might want to use it for AI, right? So therefore, data retentions are increasing. With retentions increasing and growth being exponential and internal governance, risk, and compliance and external legislation playing a part, this is all leading to the need for scalable storage, resilient storage, and secure storage. Because the longer you retain your data on storage, the more secure you want that storage to be. And that's where immutability really plays a part, because it allows you that ability to retain that data on storage for a whole lot longer and ensure the integrity of that data and ensure that you will always retain that data for that retention period. And this creates accountability and auditability within your organization. I'm sorry, I've only got 15 minutes and I'm probably already past it, but it's like speed dating this. And there's so much I want to say, but I just can't. Okay, so from a Nexan value proposition, storage is a bit of a commodity, right? And I appreciate that some of you in the room haven't heard of Nexan. We do have client sites within Ghana, but we do have differentiators. Because we manufacture our storage and because we have the scalability with our storage, that helps with lowering the total cost of ownership. Because if you think about it, if you can scale your storage on demand within a chassis or a particular form factor, that gives you the ability to not have to go out and purchase another device when you need to scale or when your data grows. Because the question is not, is my data going to grow? It's going to be, when is my data going to grow, right? And it needs to have high density, it needs to perform well, but most importantly, with a lot of countries now, and because of costs being cut, is the ability to have longer refresh cycles. So from a Nexan perspective, we have solutions in play where we are still supporting them past 11 years, right? And that gives us the ability to clients to sweat their asset for a whole lot longer, but they're also not penalized into a 5-year refresh cycle. Because if you're an organization with a lot of data, to replace your storage within 5 years it's unattainable. A lot of organizations just simply from a CapEx expenditure point of view cannot do that, and then they will run the risk of sweating the asset outside of warranty. Built-in redundancy, so from a Nexan point of view, all our components are redundant, so if a component fails, another component will take over, and of course we're backed by worldwide support, so we'll obviously ship that component to you. Support for bilateral cloud movements, so the ability to send data to and from the cloud, and then of course immutability, flexibility, and continuous research and development. So that's really it. I encourage you to have a discussion with me. From a positioning and use case point of view, we see the data, we can store the data, ultimately. It doesn't matter what the data set is, and that can cover all of these areas over here. Unfortunately, I've been given the nod that I'm out of time. So tools available for you. We'll send this all to you. If you want to have a further discussion, we can take it forward. Thank you, everyone.
Please, any questions? Any questions? Any questions, please?
Yeah.
In case we are using another storage as our enterprise solution for our maybe production storage, then we have this serious ransomware attack on our system. Then how approach you will be able to recover this kind of your data without a backup solution like any data protection solution that we have in organization?
Okay, so you're talking about like a virtualization, production data gets hit with ransomware, so like Hyper-V, VMware, whatever virtualization tool you're using. In that scenario, because immutability is within our Unity device or the Asurion device, depending on which option you choose, you would always have the ability to recover that data, because once a snapshot is taken, essentially the data goes into an immutable silo, right? And immutability means that the data cannot be changed, edited, altered, or deleted in any shape or form. So once that snapshot has been taken and that data has gone into its silo, if ransomware comes into the next snapshot, yes, it will still take that snapshot, but you can delete that, right? And then you recover the data from the cleanest point or the last recovery before the ransomware hits your organization, right? Because think of it like within the device, the ransomware cannot spread when it's in an immutable state. It cannot go across the device and infect all the other silos of data within the device, if that makes a simplistic way of explaining it.
Because initially, maybe you didn't mention snapshot technology in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
So that's
100%. So that's where.
So do you have a local or replication snapshot technology, or only a local solution?
Sorry?
Snapshot technology. Do you have it in local solution or replication solution?
Well, snapshotting it depends on your policy, right? So you set the policy on when you want to do the snapshots, but if you wanted to do it in a redundant form where you had it at a primary and a secondary site, you could have snapshots both at the primary site and the secondary site. Absolutely. And you set those intervals.
Set up as a replicated
Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions?
Please, any questions? Okay. Well, please, a big round of applause. Byron, thank you very much. All right. So, well, ladies and gentlemen, I would entreat for us to all please scan the QR code one more time. If you haven't done so, please kindly do so. It's on your table. It's a small piece of paper, so please kindly scan it. Also, right after here, please, we're moving to do more or less a demonstration. So it's more like an exhibition. So our partners are going to do so. So please, they are going to go back there, and we'll entreat for everyone to please kindly go there and have a look as to how it all works, okay? We'll be doing that for just about 5 to 10 minutes, okay? And then afterwards, we'll proceed to something else. So please, just 5 to 10 minutes. 5 to 10 minutes. Thank you very much.
You can come around. So we've got Captivate, still setting up. We've got Odeon here, and then Dion over here too as well. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, this demonstration is for all of us to be right close to the table. We're going to be asking questions. You can ask any question as far as the product is concerned, as to how it works. I know Captivate has, set up. Dial 2 is setting up too as well. Great.
So what you can expect from that is having side by side how the system is going, yes, but how the user is experiencing the service that you're providing as well. But let me just show you how it appears. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So let's say to give you a proper view of it, everything that you would have as a service, whether it's app, USSD channels, web app, everything, even app API, we would have it in a designated environment in which we would be doing that testing. So we would have what we call robots, which are basically computers in a rack, where we would do the testing. We would have real phones, whether it's iOS, Android devices. We would have it for you to test the app, different version of your app you would want to test. Let's say you have an app that is not yet released and you want to test as well. We can have it provided that you give us or you install that. If it's an APK or the test flight app, we can have it on the device.
Core banking services. You want it to be able to handle things like fund reversals. Let's say someone sends money and then it doesn't show up, but he was debited, right? That's the sort of thing that an agent can actually handle. If you wish for it to be able to handle that, you just have to give it the right tools, tell it when to use those tools, and it will be able to facilitate those sort of transactions, and interactions with people. So there is an agent that I created for an insurance company, right? I would have loved us to test it out, to try to test it out, although there is a lot of noise and external, that it might hear and also might interrupt the discussion. But let's just try it out. So I'll just go back to audio.ai. I will click on try demo. So in order to start a call, So one of the things I didn't mention is that there are different channels through which you can access the agents, right? So you can access the agents
such that if I onboard on my mobile app and tomorrow I go to your website, internet banking, I can still authenticate myself because, it's not exactly, it's outside of the device, right? If I register my voice through the device, I can use a pay phone or use someone else's phone, call into your contact center, and still be able to authenticate myself because it's not tied to the device, right? So we do use the phone's camera, but we don't authenticate on the phone. Yeah. So that's what we do at a very high level.
If we want to engage, do you do something like a POC?
Yes, we do. In fact, this is so I created this QR code in real life, right? What you'll be getting, depending on your use case and depending on the engagement, whether you want on-prem or cloud or whatever, make that, right? So the technology we use for liveness check is what we call passive liveness, right? Where we take a single frame of that user's selfie, and at the back end we use AI and machine learning to determine if
So we know that in the event of a ransomware attack, there'll be tens of thousands of files all being encrypted at the same time, even if it's just by 1 bit, or normally it's half a block encryption, for them to encrypt at speed. So we'll see that. We'll see a massive spike on our system. So that acts as an early warning system to you guys. Say, oh, hang on, something unusual this is irregular behaviour. But what it wouldn't do is overwrite the original files. So we'll still have all your data protected, secure, and happy when you need to recover it, because it's not like backup, where you've got it in a compressed state and you have to rehydrate that data. Because we've got it in native raw format, when you want it back, bang, it's there. And we do that via our RDMA connection, so it's high-speed networking. Your ISOs for your main server builds, they could all be stored there. High-value data for transactional data from a finance perspective could all be there. It doesn't really matter.
So you said something about your granny, saying something about acronyms are good and helps with remembrance. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Please, iOuranos. I don't know what you're going to give to him, but please, a round of applause for my very good friend over here. Beautiful. That was nice. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, all too soon we've come to the end of this amazing conference. I believe it's been very, very fruitful. And so I would love to now call on the customer relations marketing manager, or should I put it, customer success marketing manager of iOuranos, in the person of Susan Abefo. Please put your hands together for her.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope we've had fun. It's been a whole day. Thank you so much. So we'll make it pretty brief so we can have time to attend to other things. As we've come to the end of this event, we'd like to say a very big thank you to everyone, to our partners, to our customers, to our sponsors, and of course to you, our distinguished guests. I know our mouths are moving, but definitely our hands can still work, right? So please, let's give ourselves a thunderous round of applause to appreciate ourselves for a thunderous. I think this building should shake, sort of. Right? Thank you so much for taking our time out of your busy schedule to honor our invite. It's been a room full of conversations, and one thing that stood out for me was the fact that digital transformation is not just about technology any longer. It's about building organizations that are resilient, building organizations that are secure and are future ready. And we've been able to exchange ideas, and that's why we have events like this where we can share ideas and learn from one another. So on behalf of iOuranos, we'd like to say a very big thank you once again for your undivided attention, for your participation. Thank you for asking the questions. And beyond this room, we look forward to having these conversations. We look forward to building a more secure environment and a more secure organization. Thank you very much for your time. Have a safe trip back, and have a nice day. Thank you.
My question here is, Susan, don't go anywhere. My question here is, when is the next one? We all want to know. Tomorrow?
Definitely. So yeah, it's my first time, like Tino said, it's my first time coming to Ghana, and it's been beautiful. So definitely, there will be another one, maybe next week. I hope you'd answer our call. Yeah? Do we have a yes? So there's no one saying yes, there's no other one.
Everyone said yes.
Everyone said yes. Yeah. Okay, so definitely, we'd reach out to you. But beyond this, we'll have more conversations. Thank you, everyone.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, please a big round of applause for Susan one more time. Okay, so we want to say a very big thank you to our partners and also to every single person who came through. Thank you so much. Well, my name is Jay Kojo-Dasabra. It's been a fantastic moment with you. I've been your MC. And back to what Tino was saying, where are the Mexicans in the building? I believe everybody. Anyways, thank you all so much for being here. And mind you, please, to all pictures and videos that you might have taken with your phones, please kindly tag us on social media, all right? It's iOuranos, all right? Ouranos Tech, Ouranos Tech, okay? Ouranos Tech on all social media platforms, okay? Yes, the future is digital, right? Yes, so most definitely now I keep on saying that visibility is the new currency. So please, kindly tag us as much as you can. Thank you very much. God bless you, and we'll see you at the next. Bye-bye.